disastrous from there. Ground first contact, thin strikes, top shots, all from the same family, essentially getting the low point before the ball, having to stand up so the club doesn't bury itself in the ground, all of these things. So really holding on to those is very, very important. Hey golfers, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, we're going to take a detailed look at Ludvig Aberg's golf swing. A lot of subscribers would say to me, can you do this? Because I think people just like looking at his golf swing. I do too, I don't blame you. It is really, really nice. So I want to highlight some things that he does. Some of it you might be able to take on board into your swing and help you. But we're going to highlight some of the stuff that he does in his golf swing. Okay, so we have two angles up. On the right hand side, we have face on, and on the left hand side, we have down the line. Now, a couple of things I want to point out in the setup position. I mean, I think people sometimes neglect the setup. It is so important. In Ludvig's case here, we can see arms hanging beautifully out of the shoulder straight down, kind of would dissect in between his two hands. So we like that. The back of his armpit down the front of the knee into the ball of the foot. Again, very good. Okay, spine straight to this point, and then there'll be a little bit of curvature up to the top, and that's normal. I think a lot of golfers try and make their spine poker straight, and actually that's not what we want. Okay, so it's kind of relaxed. The bottom of the back, mid-back, nice and flat, and then rounded a tiny bit. Lots of things that we can take from this, and I could go on and on about it. Let's look at the front on side here with some of the setup things that he does. Shaft leaning slightly forward at address, kind of pointing at his left groin. This is really, really important to do in the setup position. It helps with so many things you wouldn't believe. Really helps get that ball turf contact, helps deal off the club, leads to more compression, and it's a really, really nice place to start. Okay, so take note of that. If you're not currently doing that, I'd love you to. You will find it helps an awful lot. Okay, so listen, could go into more detail, but just a generally very all-round good setup. Now, let's get into the most exciting part for people, the actual swing itself. Okay, and we'll start over here on the left side. Takeaway position here. Okay, shaft parallel to the ground. Club could essentially be camera angle very slightly, but the club does appear slightly behind the hands. Nothing crazy. Remember, in the golf swing, there's no such thing as perfect. What we want to be is within a certain range of, you could call it functionality. Okay, so it's not perfection. We just don't want extremes. So we don't want the club sitting way in here. Okay, so this is a very, very good takeaway. One of the keynotes from this, and this is kind of a trend throughout his swing, which you'll see, is his spine angle and club face match perfectly. We see this a lot on very, very good golf swings. Of course, there may be some outliers in golf. That always is. Cue the comment section for people who say the takeaway doesn't matter, because you wouldn't believe how much I get that. But it really, really does, okay? We need to be in a nice little range here, okay? Now, interestingly, watch what he does on the right-hand side to the takeaway position. If I drop a couple of lines kind of on the outside of his foot and up his hips. Okay, so this way. Now, initially, okay, we hear about swaying. Now, this is not a sway. He shifts. Look at the right hip, or left as we look at it. The right hip, how it kind of bumps slightly outside that line. You see that? There. All right, that's like a little trigger. That's his pressure shifting to the right, which is really good. And in the takeaway position, you can see slightly outside that line. Really nice width as well, with the hands creating a little bit of gap between his outside of his thigh and his hands. And you'll note as well, not really a whole lot of wrist hinge to this point. Very minimal amount of wrist hinge to get that club to parallel. Okay, so really nice, beautiful takeaway. Okay, let's take it on up. As I said, it's going to be a wee bit more detailed today. I like diving into swings like this. Hopefully you do too. If you do, don't forget to hit the like button and hit the subscribe button. Really, really helps. So we'll take this on up to kind of halfway back here. And actually, let me put the lines back on that we had up, because they're going to be key to show you something in the downswing, which is really, really important. Okay, so we'll keep those lines there. Now halfway back, take them halfway back here as well. Lead arm parallel. P3 for golfers who like the P system. Okay, we've got the hands in front of his right bicep. His lead arm in more, and you can see that that would be pointing, if we drew a line straight out of that, it would be pointing over here to the right of target somewhere. So he's already creating some depth early in the swing. Really, really good. And you can see on this side as well, that hip is still outside of that line. Okay, now let's bring this to the top. And a position that, if you've followed me or subscribed to me for any length of time, you know I am a massive, massive fan of. Okay, top of the backswing position. Okay, club face, most importantly, very slightly closed to the forearm. Okay, so slightly club face, slightly more skyward than the forearm. Now that's great. You can have that matching the forearm, or kind of like Ludvig does here, you can have it pointing a little bit more to the sky. The implications that it has in the downswing and the overall swing in general is crazy. Okay, so important. What a lot of people do, get the club pointing more down to the ground, open, right? And then that has mega implications in the downswing. All right, so really, really strive for that one. He's got his right arm in a beautiful place as well. It's not flying, still kind of in front of his chest, which is great. And notably as well, and you'll see this with a lot of really good golfers that you watch on TV. I know this is a shorter iron, but look at where his club gets to at the top of his backswing, right? We'll go right to the end, which is here. It is not parallel to the ground, okay? And it is not beyond the parallel. And this is something I constantly see when I'm teaching, is the club going to act too far in an effort to maybe create more club head speed or distance. But actually, it's just excess. We don't need it. We actually lose so much control when that happens. I've done videos on that before about wrist hinge, left arm collapsing, all of those things. It's crazy. We don't need it, right? You will not lose speed or distance by swinging short of parallel. You will actually be a lot more efficient. All right. Another thing to note, tour players generally as well, average, if we look, sorry, I changed that back to green and get my colors all mixed up here. Should have done green for good and red for bad, but right arm, if you can kind of imagine, that's sort of his bicep, tricep, upper arm, and then here we'll see his right arm. So notice that that angle does not break down. Okay, we're going to see, I think Rory has 69 degrees, and that's measured actually from more this angle here. So yeah, it's hard to see from maybe this angle perfectly without getting some 3D on it, but 62. So what happens is that right arm doesn't actually collapse. All right, it nearly maintains itself as straight as it can possibly be, which gives him incredible width to the top. Look at the distance from, say, his right shoulder in behind there to his hands. Okay, width. This is what keeps that left arm slightly straighter. Okay, not trying to keep your left arm straight, but actually can be achieved by the fact that the right arm doesn't bend or collapse. All right. Apologies, a little guy coughed there. Right. So really brilliant top of the backswing. Okay. Now let's bring it out. We can also look at things like he's got a fraction of flex in his right leg, which is great. Okay. We don't want to lock that thing out. Some golfers will have a little more bent than he does. But really just coiled up, lovely. Right hip sitting higher than the left, all that great stuff. Okay. Now, here's where it kind of gets really, really exciting and interesting for me, because I love looking at this. Let's take the lines, which I keep evidently deleting here, into this position. All right. So we know that at that halfway back position, he was outside of it. Now watch what starts to happen. All right. He's starting the downswing now. Watch how much these hips move into impact, right? That's the weight shift. So from here, those hips are starting to shift across. This lead knee will be moving over. That's phenomenal. And I miss impact here on this frame, but we can see that he would certainly be having some shaft lean into impact here. Can he get to impact? What would happen would be his hands would be in front of his lead thigh, club head behind the hands, great for compression. And don't forget, that's kind of where he started as well. All right, and he shifted his body across. Really, really good. Now something I want to note, and people talk about shallowing the club, and some people say, "Oh, just swing it up and down the same plane line." But in actual fact, that's not what we do. It has to shallow a little bit, and I could pull up 100 swings from the best in the world and show you how it works. Get this line on here. Yet there we go. All right. Now, what I want you to do, if you imagine that green line is his shaft, I'm going to extend it right down. Get it right on here. Okay. Well, you see that point slightly inside the ball. Okay. So slightly steep. We take him down to the same position in the downswing. Now look at the shaft. Now it's pointing ever so slightly outside the ball. So it is a good thing in your swing to feel like sometimes you go back a little steeper so that you can shallow it in the downswing, because a lot of golfers take the club far too much inside to flatten the backswing, and then what happens in the downswing, it steepens. Okay, so bear that in mind, and I say that is something that we see a lot. Even Bryson, when people say he swings on one plane, he doesn't. He shallows, and so does everybody. All right, so there's my little rant over. Okay. Couple other things. Listen, I said this was going to be detailed. I just think it's fascinating to look at how these guys move, what they do, and what are the common trends that they share. So that I like to look for. Okay, I'll get to my favorite part in a second here. But coming down into this downswing, we're going to take you to right here. Okay, now take it on this side too. So P6, last parallel for people who like the P system, like I said earlier. Couple of really good things from here, okay? His hips are open. His chest is square to close. Oh, sorry, it's closed. It'll get to square, but it's closed, right? So great separation. Now, I appreciate that a lot of people watching this might not have the flexibility or the strength to get to that position, and that's fine, but at least try a little bit, because if you have some amount of it, it will help. A lot of golfers are in this position, and they'll get the club, the shoulders open and the club way out in front of them. So I'll get to the club here in a second. And also you can see that he's still got some nice lag between his right forearm and club shaft. You can measure lag from the left if you like, but either way, he hasn't lost his wrist angles, and he's arrived at this beautiful position where the hands are in front of the edge of his right thigh and the shaft is parallel to the ground. What we're going to see, what I see when I'm teaching a lot, is I'm going to see by the time the hands get to this position, I'm going to see the shaft way down here. Okay, so really kind of losing the wrist angles early. Disastrous from there. Ground first contact, thin strikes, top shots, all from the same family. Essentially getting the low point before the ball, having to stand up so the club doesn't bury itself in the ground. All of these things. So really holding on to those is very, very important. Okay. Now, if we take it into here, we're going to see that the club head is fractionally behind his hands. So the mass of the club inside his hands. Again, another position we're 100% going to see from all of the greats. Okay. And I have videos on my channel actually about that. And then we're going to see the club face turned down slightly. Okay. So if you imagine we're looking at this like a clock face, and we're essentially going to see his club kind of at 1 o'clock on the clock face. All right, so it's turned down. That's crucial because it allows him to keep that face square. He's not coming down with the face pointing to the sky, which a lot of people do, and then they have to really actively try and roll the forearms or early release to try and square it. Now we're chicken winging. There's loads of implications from that. I'm a huge fan of the P6 position, and I think if we all worked on it, it would be so much better for us in the long run. Okay, I know this is a little bit long-winded, but as I say, it was going to be detailed. All right, you were forewarned. Okay, through, lovely. There's one other thing I really want to highlight here into this impact here. Okay, so we've got a frame just before impact, and like I said, you can see shoulders quite square, hips very open, and tremendously actually. You watch how long Ludvig keeps his right foot on the ground. It's very interesting that not many golfers will do that. You look at the likes of a Justin Thomas, and you know, by the time before he gets to impact, or you think a Tiger back in the day, his foot was nearly fully up. Okay, so it shows some really good flexibility to get those hips that open and still keep that foot fairly flat to the ground. Pretty crazy. That's one I probably don't suggest that you try. Just a disclaimer in case you put your back out. Don't want that. Okay, through. And lovely impact. I mean, it's phenomenal. Got some bend in his right arm. We've got some shaft lean, all that good stuff. And through with quite minimal face rotation on the way through. Because he doesn't need to, because his face was good here. And don't forget, it was slightly close to the forearm at the top as well. So don't be afraid to work towards a much stronger club face and counter that with correct body rotation. That is absolutely crucial for most golfers that I teach. And just learning that if you can do it and the ball goes a little left, don't panic. You've got the good, strong face. You can start to work in the other elements to counteract that, the better matchups. So, very cool. Now, one final thing, and this is the real, like, this is awesome to see. We're going to focus in on his left foot from this front on position. I'll actually pull it up here because I'll have a wee look at it too. So, take him to the top of both of these. Okay. Now watch the first move. Can you see how underneath this lead foot, look at the pressure go in to the toes or the front of his lead foot. Okay, we'll see it from here. Like he's squishing into the ground. See that? Okay, now watch this. So he's coming there. Alright, so there's him kind of maxed out on the toe. Now if we zoom out and look at where the club is, okay, both positions, lead arm parallel. Now, watch what happens from this point on. Look where the weight goes. Heel. Very much into the heel. And then, of course, finish. He's fully on that heel. And it actually spins. Alright? Pretty amazing. And that's exactly what we see when we look into the downswing. First initial part, the weight goes into that toe. And then when the club sort of starts to approach this P6 position, it should already be starting to drive into that heel as much as possible. And what does that do? That gets his hips open. It gets everything kind of moving this way. Look at the hips open because that weight's driving towards the heel. If that weight was on his toes, couldn't get those hips open as much as we'd like. Here, pressure into the heel, bang. Really cool golf swing. Listen, if you stuck through all that, thank you so much. Some people really like this. This is why I want to bring it to the channel. As I said, this was a request. People like to look at Ludvig's swing, and rightly so, because it is a thing of beauty. So let me know in the comments any other type of content that you want to see. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this analysis. I really appreciate it. And if you could like the video, subscribe, and yeah, comment. Let's keep the interaction going. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks so much, guys.